Lisa,
Yes, baby girl.
when I grow up, I want to be a woman to society.
Then so shall you be.
Hey y'all, this is Lisa Landry. Welcome to Womenis to Society, episode 30 with Dianne Post. This is a continuation of our discussion from last week. No worries though if you missed episode 29. All you really need to know as we continue our chat is that Dianne Post is a former parole officer who became a psychologist. And then when she realized it's not really the people who were so messed up as it's our system, she went to law school. On today's episode, we're going to continue our chat, and we're going to talk about how patriarchy has a bunch of falsehoods that are really messing up men, and especially women and children, in court.
It's patriarchal thought to me. It's about how do we take care of what's mine and what's this and that's theirs. You know, I'm more toward a matriarchal society. How do we all feed each other and everybody chill out? And, you know, there doesn't need to be all this strife. If we can all just sit down and figure out how to communicate. And that seems to be more of a woman thing to do than a male thing to do.
I don't think in all the research that I've ever done that they've ever proven that there was a matriarchal society. No. There were communal societies where people worked together, where men and women had equal power and equal prestige and equal privilege. Those societies lasted the longest and had the least amount of wars. Now, you know, I've worked on violence against women, or you may not know, but I'm telling you, for years and years and years, right? And it is not about violence or money or rage. It certainly is not about anger, and it's not about anger management. It's about power. That's what it's about. When you look at countries that have the most equal gender index, where men and women have the most equal power in a society.
You mean like people, politicians in place and equal salaries?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Maybe 50% or close to 50% of women in your positions of power. Close to 50% or close to getting the same salaries as men. You know, no place is it equal.
Okay.
But in some places it's quite close.
Like where?
Scandinavia.
Okay, so you got to go where it's
in
cold.
Those countries, Iceland, Finland, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Mm-hmm. Those are the 5 countries that have the highest index of female power and the lowest index of violence against women.
Really?
It happens, but it's the lowest index in the world. Where do women have the highest index of violence against them?
Oh, I'm going to leave this up to you. I have a lot of thoughts in my head, but...
Where they have the least power, which is in the Islamic countries in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Where women have virtually no power, the most violence is directed against them. So, I mean, it's really quite simple. Where you have equality of power, you have less violence against women, because women are respected, they're understood to be equal partners to you and me, and we're all in this together.
Right.
In these other countries where women are not respected, except as childbearing vessels, they have no power, and they have nothing they can do about anything.
Yeah.
So, there they are.
That breaks my heart. Absolutely breaks my heart.
It's all about power. That's what it's about. It's not anger, it's about power.
Well, what are your thoughts on Sweden now? Because I'm reading all these reports of all these rapes and all this violence against women, and a lot of people are saying it's because of all these refugees who are coming in from the Middle Eastern countries and from Africa. Do you think there's any validity to that?
I have no idea. I haven't studied it, and I don't know.
Yeah, because it seems like there's a lot of agenda-driven reporting going on from all facets. I'm not picking sides, but I was wondering if you had any data on that.
I don't.
Me neither.
I've certainly heard the stories, which a lot of it could be discrimination as well.
Right.
We well know that.
Well, because that's the hard part of it, because that has been, you know, the black rapist, the Indian guy who's shady, you know, like it's been an ongoing button to push.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you have to wonder, like, is this actually valid, or is this just the resurgence of that old tale?
Right.
Yeah. But it's scary to consider, because it seems like so much doesn't actually get accurately reported right now. I mean, I should know about Ms. Gonzalez, don't you think?
Yes, you should.
Right? I should know about this filing that you put in place 10 years ago Which, by the way, I was a mother for the very first time that year that you did that, so thank you. You know, because I kind of feel like as moms, especially, we're all in this together. Like, I see a picture of a kid in Africa, that's my kid. I see a picture of a kid in Los Angeles, that's my kid.
Well,
you know?
this is another huge myth that mothers always get custody in the United States. That is absolutely not true.
Yeah.
And it has never been true, except for one 10-year period. I did a study some years ago looking by 10-year periods and going through all the case decisions in family law of who got custody, men or women. Mm-hmm. And it was men. Men.
When was that?
Up until the decade of the 50s. Men got custody.
Wait, that's blowing my mind. You're telling me that back in the 1940s and before then, if you had a divorce with your husband, the man got custody of the kids?
Yes. Well, you know that men used to own their wives and children.
Well, they still do.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
but
from what
legally,
you're telling me.
legally own their wives and children.
Okay.
They did.
Okay.
So they could actually kill their wife or their child.
Rape them, beat them.
Anything. And you would have no more punishment than if you went out and shot your horse.
Right.
Right?
It's kind of like Sharia. We were living under like a secular Sharia. If you want to call it that?
I wouldn't call it secular. I'd call it biblical. But, but at any rate, they actually owned them. And what else was true under the law was that if the woman did something wrong, let's say, 1918, your wife goes down and she breaks a window in the grocery store and steals a cake.
Okay.
You, the husband, are responsible.
For the window and the cake?
Yes.
And the wife beating?
Not her. Because you are responsible for her and for the children's behavior.
Oh my gosh.
So this is why they were given freedom to beat them.
Right.
Because they had to discipline them because they were going to be responsible for what they did, right? So this is the way it was. And men got custody because it was thought, at least, but there was the tender years doctrine, which was that, well, women probably should keep the kids until, while they're still breastfeeding.
Yeah.
When they get old enough to talk and walk about and work. As soon as they get old enough to work
in the fields,
they go to dad. Because you need the dad to put them to work and to bring them up knowing how to work and be good people. So men got the kids. Often women had no right to their children whatsoever. They really had no right to them. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't even any question of who was going to get custody. In that lovely nifty 50s, which we have mythified to be some kind of a wonderful family time, which it was not. Mm-hmm. I was alive then. And during that 10 years, from 50 to 60, women were more likely to get custody.
Okay. What was the switch? Was it the World War II? Was that one of the...
Well, it was not so much World War II, but when they came back and they went back to the home, family, white picket fence kind of thing. Then, during that decade, the decade of the 50s, women were more likely to get child custody in a divorce. There weren't that many divorces.
Yeah. But
if there were, women were more likely to get custody and no child support.
Okay, so you can have your baby, but you can't feed the baby.
Correct.
Okay.
Starting in the 60s, it changed back again. Starting in the 60s with, men and women should have equal rights, right?
Okay, so that was it.
It started going back again.
Okay.
Ever since the 60s, men are more likely to get custody than women if they ask. Now, people will say, Diane, you're crazy because, look at the statistics. 80% of the time women get the kids.
Right.
That's because 80% of the time women ask for the kids and the men don't.
Yeah, they don't. Well, because, yeah.
If they don't ask, obviously, then they don't get them. But if men ask for custody, they win 70% of the time. Even if they have been proven to have committed domestic violence or sexual assault.
So they would rather give a child to a parent who has committed misdemeanors than or felonies, depending on what happened, than the actual parent who would probably be a better parent.
They don't believe the mother and the child. They don't believe them that he committed domestic violence or that he committed sex abuse. Judges don't believe them.
Why would they not believe them?
Because they're men judges and because they've been taught that women lie in court. Police have been taught that women lie. Police have been taught that women lie about rape.
Oh, yeah, I know there was a high muckety-muck police officer in Rhode Island. I don't remember what his commission was, but I think it was 1989. He's been quoted as saying they don't usually take rape reporting seriously because women lie.
Right.
And that was 89. That's not that long ago.
No, it wasn't. And just recently I read something about, all the rapes in the military and all of that the police think 50% of rape reports are lies, when in fact it's 3%. The average rate of lying about a crime is 8%.
Okay.
And the lies about custody abuse and child abuse are 5%, and rapes are 3%. So women are less likely to be lying about domestic violence and less likely to be lying about rape or child abuse, but they're considered to be more likely to be lying.
So this is an absolute absurdity, because if you
Yes,
have
it is.
statistical data showing that, women do lie about rape 3% of the time,
Yes.
or maybe it might be, if that's national
Which is
average,
less than average lying about crime.
right? Because if you're saying 8%, like my math is not very good, Miss Post, but even I can figure out that's a 5 percentage point difference.
Well, if people would just understand that it's a myth that women always get custody. It's absolutely a myth. It's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And also, they also think that all women get child support, and they don't.
No, I pay child support.
Yeah.
I'm the one paying child support.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more women paying the child support. I think it's another way. I'm not saying this in my case, but I think it's another way to keep women locked down financially. Because if you don't have the money to fight back, you don't have the money to fight back.
You don't have the money, right.
So you're just going to deal
Right.
with what you've been given.
So if women learn anything else, or people learn anything else, it's not true that women always get custody. It's not true that women and children lie about physical abuse or sexual abuse. Once in a while, you find somebody who lies, like that, some big story.
Susan Smith.
Somebody, yeah.
There is a lot about that.
Sure.
A lot of people say 2 black guys did it.
Yes.
That seems to be the standard kind of rationale.
Oh yeah, that's the rationale, because then you go
with a
off
crazy
running off
woman
looking for black guys.
Right. Crazy woman making something up.
Right, and
nothing.
that's just another
and
meaning
blame
that
the two,
all the crimes are done by black people.
2 black guys.
Yeah, which is also false.
Yeah.
But also the big cases that come up,
Right.
like that Tanya or Toya or whatever her name was, who said she'd been raped by all the football players, and it all turned out to not be true.
Right.
Then that gets blown all over the news.
Oh,
and everybody,
gosh.
See, just an
Yeah.
example. See,
No,
women lie
that
all the
happens
time.
on
Women
Twitter.
lie all the time.
I know.
And every time that happens, I go, oh, damn, because that's just going to feed that myth.
It feeds the myth. It gives these men's groups more power to come out and say, oh, yeah, they're crazy bitches. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what about women judges? I mean, there's women judges now, more women than ever before.
There are definitely women, and there are 2 kinds of them. There are the women judges who understand the reality of what is going on in the world, and they're few and far between. And there are women judges who are women judges because they're just like the men, and worse.
Got it.
And worse. And sometimes I personally know of a woman judge who was herself battered, and who had a horrible record of mistreating battered women. Why?
Because she was a self-hating cunt.
Because, well, whatever her rationale, she had been battered, but these people, they're different from me. This was just a one-time thing for me. This was just an accident. This was just he didn't really mean it. But these women, they are not as good as I am.
They deserved it.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to separate yourself from the rabble, otherwise you realize you're just like every other woman. You are just as vulnerable as every other woman. You are as unimportant as all the rest of us.
I don't think a lot of our sisters want to see that.
So psychologically, to separate yourself from them, you determine they're lying, or they caused it, or it's their fault. That's not my situation. But for them it is. So sometimes the women are worse. And we know this in trial juries on rapes.
Really?
Yes. Men attorneys, defense attorneys, prosecutors, try not to have a lot of women on a rape trial because they overrule against the woman.
Are you kidding me?
Because if any woman can be raped, that means I can. But if the women that get raped are those women who are out late at night, women who are drinking,
short skirts,
women who are wearing short skirts, women who are prostitutes, women who are sluts, women who are unchaperoned, they can get raped, not me.
Yeah.
So again, it's a
disconnect.
psychological distancing yourself from that rape, so it's not going to be you next time. Mm-hmm. But in fact, it's you.
Right.
So actually, attorneys try not to have women on rape trial.
I had no idea.
It activates their patriarchal sense.
Right. Men want to protect.
That's going to activate that.
Men do
I
that.
never would have done that to
Yeah.
this nice little
Yeah.
girl here. Why would anybody hurt this nice little girl? So it activates that patriarchal part of their brain.
Right.
So
Which
it's actually better to have them on it.
It is better. Well, there's a lot of good things that men do. Like I don't, I know I have a lot of male listeners who are listening to this. I don't mean to bash dudes. You know what I mean? Like I really feel like a lot of men are suffering under this patriarchy because
Absolutely.
they can't be nurturing, they can't be sensitive, they can't be rational about situations. They're expected to be physical
Or
and
cry.
Yeah.
Or have any emotion other than anger.
Anger is acceptable.
And many times I've tried to explain to men that if they would only see through this falsity, that if we had equality and everyone could be who they are, it would benefit them as well as us.
Yeah.
And most of them are going, I don't quite see that, Diane. I can't quite see it. But it would.
It would.
It would benefit all of us.
Yeah.
And the men who, for example, they've done these studies now, men who are very involved in their own children's care are much happier than men who aren't.
Yeah.
In the old days, men never had anything to do with the child care.
Right.
And more they're having to do the child care.
Right. Well, a lot of that's economical.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. But those men are happier.
Yeah.
And they're going, well, why didn't I do this before?
Because you weren't told it's okay to sit down with your kid and play
Exactly.
Legos and have as much fun. Maybe smoke a bowl before you sit down, and just enjoy the surprise of watching somebody appreciate something for the very first time.
And in my own family, it would have been so much better if my dad had stayed home and my mother had gone to work. It really would have been so much better.
Did you have a frustrated mom?
Yes.
I did too.
Very bright.
Yeah.
And totally frustrated.
My mom was so resentful of. I love you, Mom, if you're listening, because she's made a lot of peace. We've made a lot of peace through the years. But I had one of those moms that, bless her, breadwinner, Navy, mother of two, not quite college educated, but some college, and she was the breadwinner and had no voice. And the in-laws, my grandparents or my daddy's people, they didn't really care about her because she was just somebody from outside who was brought down from Colorado, and she was a Yankee, so there was all this dissatisfaction. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of us grew up with those moms.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of women now don't want to see that their moms were like that because we're supposed to be so enlightened,
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, things are way different. So my mom wanted to go to college. She fought to go to high school. Her parents weren't going to let her go to high school.
Oh, wow.
She fought to go to high school. They didn't let her go. And she missed 2 years after 8th grade, and then they moved to town. And then she could go to high school. And she went.
Good for her.
Being 2 years older than everyone else. But they let her go.
Good.
And she was very smart. High school at that time was equivalent to going to college. Now.
Yeah.
And so she went to high school, and she wanted to be a secretary. That's the highest she could think.
Right.
She wanted to be a secretary. And none of that ever happened. And she got pregnant.
Yeah.
In them days, what'd you do when you get pregnant?
Got married.
Got married. So that was the end of that. And my dad was much more the nurturing guy. Much more the nurturing guy. He loved the kids. He loved to play with them and ride them around on his back and throw you around in a thunderstorm or, a snowstorm or whatever. Take us in the truck with him all the time and, feed us chocolate bars and popcorn all day long. And, he was much more of a nurturing parent than she was.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of dads like that, actually.
But he wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
He had to work.
Right.
Men brought home the
you had
bacon.
to.
That's what they did.
Right.
So he would be gone from 6 in the morning till 10 at night, and we never saw him except maybe one day during the week. And then when we got older, we would go with him, skip school, and go with him in the truck and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I think it does.
But it would be better for men too.
Yeah. Well, we have to get our pay up, so there's at least that chance that if they want to do it, they can do it. I have a lot of friends, that the dad is the caretaker because that's just financially better right now because mom's getting paid less than she should get because corporations chopped so many jobs back when everything fell.
So they could pay more to their CEOs.
Yeah, sickness, isn't it?
And give them a golden parachute when they destroy the company.
Yeah. How did all that come about? You would know.
Greed, theft.
Yeah. But how do we let that happen as people, as Americans? Like, how are we able to let our differences divide us to the point where children are being victimized and none of us are actually living what we want to live? We're just living through what we're living through.
It didn't happen overnight. It's happened in the last 30 or 40 years.
Right.
Dumbing down of education, attacking unions.
Yeah.
Both of those things have had a huge impact on where we are today.
Yeah.
The dumber the people, the more likely you can control them.
We're pretty dumb. Yeah. So what do? What do we do? You've been out here
We do everything.
advocating.
We do everything. And during the years that I was at the Coalition Against Domestic Violence here in Arizona, and all the years that I've done all this activism, the problem is you do have to do everything.
Yeah.
You have to do all of it. And how do you have the time and the energy and the sustainability? I mean, you have to lobby the legislature. You have to work on getting decent people in the legislature. You have to educate the public. You have to work in the public schools.
Yeah.
You have to teach the churches. The churches were the last ones to come around to the protecting domestic violence victims. They were the last one.
Really?
Yes.
That hurts me.
Well, read the Bible. You know, the God is over man and man is over woman.
Oh, see, but I have a different interpretation on Scripture because I see Asherah all over it. I see the feminine aspect of God, but that's just my own. But I hear you loud and clear. Everybody goes with that patriarchal idea of what's in the Scripture, and so Daddy gets to be in charge. But it hurts me to think that these churches would be okay with a wife being battered in front of her children.
Well, it must be her fault. You must not have been a good wife. You need to be a better wife. You need to pray. You need to ask the Lord to help you be a better wife so he doesn't beat you.
Oh, so it's your fault.
Oh, it's your
It's
fault.
like your priest molested you and it's your fault.
It's your
You
fault.
shouldn't have looked that cute.
You shouldn't have been so cute, exactly. We had actually had a case in Wisconsin when I was in law school there where a 4-year-old was molested by the boyfriend of the mother.
Oh, I'm
right?
sure that happens all the time.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
So the guy went to court and he was charged, and the judge gave him probation because he said the 4-year-old was, what's the word? Not enticing, something like that.
Enchanting.
The 4-year-old.
The 4-year-old made him do it.
4-year-old made him do it.
Right.
The crap hit the fan, let's say,
Uh-huh.
with him making such a stupid, blaming a 4-year-old. Oh, she sat on his lap because she shouldn't have sat on his lap.
And the judge bought that?
And the judge bought that. So we started a recall campaign to recall the judge.
Yeah.
To throw him out because they're
Right.
elected there.
Right.
We didn't get enough signatures.
Right.
However, the next election, he didn't run.
Hasta la bye-bye. Yeah, well, they kind of, from what I've been looking at online, it seems like a lot of these judges, and talking with people, it seems like a lot of these judges do advocate for the abuser.
Yes, they do.
Do you think that they're abusers themselves? I mean, like, does it go back to when we're talking about these female judges who are maybe victims themselves and they advocate for the abuser in the plaintiff defendant
Yes.
in front of them? Are these judges abusers themselves?
Well, I think there's two things. Actually, the statistics show that actually only about 20% of men actually do physical abuse. But it's the same guys over and over and over
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
Different
I don't
ways.
think. Oh no, I'm not
So,
saying like all
it's
dudes
not
out
that
there.
80% of guys
Yeah.
are doing it.
No.
But the other 80% that aren't doing it don't want to believe it because they don't want to have to deal with it. If they believed it, they would have to do something.
Because now you
about
have a
it.
responsibility
You have
to
a
keep your brothers in
responsibility
check.
to keep your brothers in check, and they
Yeah.
don't want to do that.
Right.
I was in a court here some years ago where there were 13 witnesses that got up and testified that these children had been sexually molested by their father. Social workers, psychologists, police officers, nurses, doctors, teachers, they all got up and testified that this father had sexually molested this child. The judge gave custody to the man.
What?
Discounted everything everybody said,
13 witnesses?
and he said, Mormon men do not molest their children.
What?
I'm giving custody to the man. He was a Mormon judge, of course.
Oh my Lord.
And this was in court.
That's sick.
It's sick.
When was that?
Probably 20 years ago.
Phew.
And that's what I mean. They don't want to admit it because then you
'Cause
would
then you
have to
have a problem
take
in your community.
responsibility
Yeah.
and do something.
Yeah. Well, to me, right now, that's Catholics.
Yeah, they're
You know?
not taking
No,
responsibility
and
either.
that saddens me. Like, I don't go to church. You know, I'm a Jew. I'm not into dogma. But, like, how can you have the Pope come out saying we're going to take the pedophile priests and just move them and pray for them in the year 2017, and you are still taking your children to that organization for a religious doctrine? I can't abide by that. Like, now that's child abuse because you have it out there that this church in current state is advocating that they don't really care if your child is harmed. They're just going to move the priest. So now you are actively putting your child in harm's way.
Right.
right?
Right.
I mean, that's just common
Yes.
sense. Like, if you take away the feeling that you may have for this religious organization and the good work that the church does do, you have to see it for what it is. You are abusing your kid because you're putting that kid
It's
in
criminal
jeopardy.
syndicate.
Yeah. So how is it still in existence? I mean, you can't
Because
answer
it's too
that. That's such
powerful. It's too powerful.
too big to fail.
They have more money than God. Right? They do. It's too powerful.
Wow. I know that the Catholic Church, or not the Catholic Church, I don't want to say that because that's not the correct terminology, but I do know that there was a bill up in New York on the docket so that children who are victimized by whomever when they're young, there's no statute of limitations.
Yes.
So
Many states have done that.
They can bring a filing against their
Correct.
abuser, and the Catholic
Oh, they were opposed to that.
completely. They shut
Completely.
it down, and this bill almost made it this year, and it's been knocked out. And to me, that should tell anybody who is bringing their kid to those organizations they're not going to advocate for your child's safety.
And how can they stand there with a straight face and say we care about the children?
No, I know.
I don't-
And how do you listen to that and not hear what's being said?
Right.
Like, I'm like that with Linda Sarsour.
I don't know who she is.
Well, I'm a liberal, and I want liberalism, but I want equality for everybody. You know, like, you get to go to whatever church organization you want to. You get to choose it, even though, you know, when it comes to the Catholic Church, I do have a certain gripe. Linda Sarsour is out there advocating for pro-Sharia. She's gone off on women who are activists against FGM, and she's kind of one of our faces right now on our side.
How's she on our side? That's nothing on my side.
That's not my side either, but she's become this important force of nature within the Democratic Party. She's out there leading women's marches and stirring up all this baloney. And if you say, no, I don't subscribe to these beliefs, you're said to be anti-Muslim or anti-feminist because you don't agree with what she's saying.
We shouldn't have any religious law in this country, whether it's Sharia or Catholic, canon law, or Mormon, or any other kind of religious law. We should have none.
Do your thing, but it shouldn't be involved in our
It's got
courtrooms.
nothing to do
It's got
with
nothing to do
government.
with the government. I'm a firm believer, yes. But it just seems like now we're becoming such a polarized nation that we're not allowed to even say no to this garbage.
Well, that's part of the plan as well, to make us as polarized as possible, because if you can separate people, then you can defeat them one by one. United, you can't defeat them, but separated, you can. So when the Contract for America people, Newt Gingrich and that group, went into Congress, they made a new rule. Prior to that, Democrats and Republicans did many things together. Mm-hmm. They not only played softball together, they went to dinner. They had parties.
It wasn't as ugly.
It wasn't as ugly.
Yeah.
They knew each other.
Right.
They were friends with each other. They went to each other's house. After they stopped all of that and said, you will have no communication at all with the Dems. And that started the big separation where they don't talk to each other, where they hate each other, where there's complete separation of people and no bipartisan working together. That's
awful.
where it started. And it's grown from there. This did not happen overnight. This is a plan. It's a plan that's gone on since Reagan, since 1980. It's been a plan. We have to turn around and do equally effective things the other way and undo this nonsense that this country cannot come together, cannot work together, does not have common values. That's what makes us a country, is our common values,
but
right?
we have common values. But that's the problem that I'm having right now. Like, it seems like our common values are so convoluted because, to me, our common value, it seems like in the crossover, is protect the children, right?
Well,
That should
that's
be
one value that
bipartisan.
everybody will say we have.
That's bipartisan. If you're pro-life, you're pro-life. If you're if you are pro-choice, you're pro-choice, but it still doesn't mean you're anti-life. If we all recognize that these kids are being harmed and we can't just come together and fix that, I guess they don't want to.
Well, how?
Thanks so much, Dianne Post, and thanks y'all for listening. Come back next week. We're going to have another episode with Dianne Post as we continue to talk about these topics, the falsities of patriarchy especially. Join me at my website, lisalandry.com. You can sign up for my newsletter and receive a free audio download. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you'll know when our episode with Dianne Post continues, which will be episode 31, and you'll know when my new comedy clips drop. I love you, Ari. Tie your shoes.